Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's pitch training. We've got some exciting stuff. You're going to learn how to assemble your pitch decks. Before we get started, I want to thank the sponsors, Procter & Gamble, Kroger, First Financial, Taft, and KMK. At this time, just please turn off your cameras, and I'll, you know, send the recording and the pitch slides from Mike Holleran over to you after the event. And I'll hand it over to Mike.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Week 6 of pitch training. This is the week where we actually help you put together your pitch deck. So everything has been building toward this. And so hopefully you feel like you've identified a good problem, thought through your solution, and now have thought through how you're going to make money and use things like the business model canvas and things from last week. So let me dive into, let's see. Well, first of all, I want to re-echo what Michael said in terms of thanking our sponsors, P&G, Kroger, First Financial, Taft, and KMK. Without their help, this would not be possible. And so thanks to them for getting behind this program. So today's agenda. So one, I want to kind of just give you a snapshot of where we are and kind of where you should be now overall. And we'll go through the actual pitch deck format. I'm going to show you a couple example pitches. We'll have some presentation tips, and then we'll go through the homework. So I'll keep this fairly interactive. So please feel free to type into chat and ask questions as we go along. The next 10 days is really for me to work closely with each of your teams and help you get your pitch decks ready and comfortable so that when the pitch competition is coming up that you feel fully prepared. So just to kind of show you where we are. So the first 2 weeks we spent time on identification and exploration of our problems. You then spent a couple weeks at ideation. Last week, you worked on the business model canvas, and then this week is building a pitch deck, and then next 2 sessions, we'll have one on Monday and then one on Thursday. I'll spend some extra time helping make sure you're ready with your pitches and the like. Keep in mind that the final pitch competition is on July 30th from 9 to noon. So, and I'll be going through what that looks like and how that's set up overall. So as a reminder, you've got some great prizes. This is wonderful. First of all, we've got 2 tracks. We've got a track for people who have been working on an existing idea that's already been kind of working prior to joining this pitch competition, and those for started a brand new idea. There's a $2,500 first prize for each of those tracks. The first place members also get Union Hall and Centrifuge memberships, which are highly valuable and really useful, especially as you pursue your startup. You get access to the PitchBook software, which is a great tool to be able to access and keep track of what's going on in the startup world. And then you get a chance to meet with startup founders, a VC, and the Centrifuge CEO. So each of the teams will get that. And then second place, you'll be meeting with startup founders and the Centrifuge CEO. And once again, both those, getting access to mentorship and connections and investors are all very important pieces. We've also got bonuses for categories in sustainability, diversity and inclusion, and education. So if your idea is in one of those 3 categories, there's bonus prizes for those. So, that's terrific. And let me just go to our first poll question. So last week, Chris Welter pinched hit for me, and he went through the business model canvas. So Michael's going to push up a poll here in a second. So what best describes your week 5 efforts in working with the business model canvas? So Michael, you want to push that poll up?
Yeah, so Mike, I can push the poll up. It's actually going to release all 3 of the questions at once. So only pay attention to question 1 for the moment.
Okay, so which best describes your week 5 efforts on the business model canvas? This tool really helped us think about our business. Wow, there's a lot to think about when starting a business. Loved working with this tool. Or what is a business model canvas? Which of those best describes, just answer that first question. Which of those best describes your effort with the business model canvas? Okay, so it looks like it really helped you think about your business. There's a lot to think about when starting a business, for sure there is. Um, so let me just end that poll here for now, and we'll relaunch the second half of it later on today. So the business model canvas is a great tool, and as Chris went through with you, it's really an opportunity for you to visualize how you want to, what are the key things you need to think about your business. If you were taking an entrepreneurship course probably 10 years ago, you would have had to write up a business plan and create a 10 to 20 page document. Well, guess what? The business model canvas is our new way in the world of entrepreneurship of thinking about how to think about all the things that go into a business plan. And so that's why we went through it. We spent a lot more time about this in true entrepreneurship classes in universities. But we wanted to give you exposure to it because it really helps you think about a couple very important pieces. One is who's your target audience and what are you offering in terms of value, and then also kind of the cost and revenue side of it. So that you will see play into how we put together our pitch decks here in a second. So if you all had a chance to work on your business model canvases, and I saw most of them submitted in the homework, I think that will be very helpful as you build out your pitch deck. So you'll see how this all flows together in terms of the pitch deck piece of it. So let me push up our second question. What is the most important criteria to winning the pitch competition on the 30th? So Michael, you want to push that one up again? So go down to page down to the second question there. And what do you think the most important criteria to winning the pitch competition is? Is it identifying an important problem? Is it solving a problem? Is it clearly explaining how your product service works? Is it developing an effective go-to-market plan? Or is it giving an enthusiastic presentation? Which is the most important criteria? What do you think? Explaining how your product works. That seems to be number one. Everybody's spreading out their votes here. All right, I'm going to end this poll too. So this is a trick question. Guess what? Every one of those is important. So there's really not the most important. All of those are important. And so what I really want to speak to next is really how do we run the pitch competition? And you've seen this slide or some of this slide in the past, but I want to go through this so you understand exactly how we're going to set this up. And every pitch competition is set up differently, but in general, they have a format like this. It's really important that you understand when you enter a pitch competition, how does it work? What's the criteria? What's the format? And how do I make all this work? So I'm going to go through this in detail right now. I'm going to stop at the end to answer any questions. So if you have questions as we go through this, please type them into chat. So first of all, every pitch competition has a format. So ours is, there's a 5-minute pitch piece where you basically have 5 minutes to pitch your idea. You cannot exceed 5 minutes. We will actually cut you off at 5 minutes. So you need to practice very carefully and make sure you do not exceed 5 minutes. That's the way to keep it fair for everybody in the competition. So it's very, very important. Probably the most important thing on here to understand is you have it up to 5 minutes. So the ideal presentation lasts 4 minutes and 58 seconds. So you've got 2 seconds to kind of spare. but we will, you have 5 minutes to pitch. After you pitch, there are the judges, and I think we've got 5 judges this time. We'll be asking you questions. There's 4 minutes of Q&A, questions and answers. And they've listened to your pitch. They haven't seen your pitch at all before, so they're going to ask you questions about your pitch, and you need to be prepared to answer those questions. We'll talk a little bit about how to be prepared for that. Then after you answer the questions and answers, the judges will give you 2 minutes of additional feedback just on your idea and what they think about it and any suggestions. This is very valuable. Quite frankly, the Q&A and the feedback is every bit as valuable as anything else if you really want to find out how to make your idea bigger and better. And then we'll have a 1-minute transition between teams. I believe we're at 11 teams right now. So we're somewhere between 10 and 12 teams. I think we've got 11 teams. So we'll have an order set for this, and that will get us through probably about a little less than 2 hours of presentation. Judges will deliberate, and then they'll come back and we'll announce the winners for each of the categories. Okay, so that's the format. So once again, most important thing here is you've got 5 minutes. Next thing is your team. I know several of you have 4 or 5 members on your team. Very key piece here too. You should plan to have no more than 2 members of your team do the presentation. Do not have 3 or 4 members try to do the 5-minute presentation. You could pick 1 or 2 people, figure out which 1 or 2 people you want to pick to do the presentation, and let them do the presentation. This is not to say that other team members aren't equally as important. Just pick your best presenters. The other team members, we will have very specific roles that you can be helping do in terms of following up, running the slides, and answering other aspects behind the scenes and things like that. So there'll be plenty for you to do. And then you will have a slide which we're asking you to introduce all your team members. So key thing here, though, is 1 or 2 people to do your presentation. And that's how you want to kind of set it all up. Okay, judging criteria. You will be judged on these 5 criteria. And hopefully this matches up well with some of the training we've done for you so far. What is the problem you're trying to solve? How big is it? How well have you defined it? How important is it? Do you really understand the problem? Secondly, what's your solution to that problem? Have you come up with a solution that really addresses that specific problem and really kind of pushes and says, this is how we're going to solve this problem? How well have you done explaining how your plan works? Basically, how your solution is going to work, whether it's a product or a service. What's your go-to-market plan? How are you going to go to marketplace? What's going to take you to market and sell and distribute and manage this? And once again, you'll see how the slides and the pitch competition fit into this. And then finally, what's your overall presentation effectiveness? How enthusiastic are you? How effective are you at communicating? How well did you answer your Q&A and the like? So those are the 5 criteria that the judges will be using to select the winners. And so now that you understand that, you want to really think about as you put your pitch deck together and use your 5 minutes, how well am I doing in putting that all together? Okay, so let me just stop here for a second. Michael, are there any questions in the chat on the format or anything like that right now?
I'm not seeing any questions.
Okay. All right. Once again, feel free to type in chat as we go along. Okay. Okay, so let's get to the fun stuff. Once again, same thing I talk about. I'm going to share with you what your homework's going to be. I'm then going to go through how you're going to get your work on your homework this week, and then I'll bring this homework back, slide back again. So what you're going to do this week is I want you to work on your pitch decks. You're going to spend time putting your first draft of your pitch decks together. Each of your teams has a mentor. I highly encourage you to reach out to your mentor, get them to help you, get them to give you feedback, get them to help coach you. If you have any specific questions this week, go ahead and email me. Here's my email address. I'll be happy to answer questions this week. I'm going to be spending time meeting with you next week on Zoom, but as you're working on your first draft of the deck, feel free to email me with any questions, and I'll be happy to answer those. And we're asking you to have your first draft of your pitch deck ready by this Saturday, the 24th. That will allow myself and others to review the first draft of your pitch deck. So when you're back here next Monday, I can give you some general comments on how to make it better and some other tips and the like. So make sure you have your first draft of your pitch deck ready by next Saturday. And then next week, once again, I'll be meeting with your teams at least once. maybe twice to help you through your pitch decks. Okay, so let's get into the education piece today. What is a pitch deck, and how does a good pitch deck work? So first of all, let me just give you some overall tips here. Also keep in mind, because you do multiple kinds of pitches. Sometimes you're pitching an investor. Sometimes you're pitching in a competition. Sometimes you're pitching somebody to be a new employee. Other times you're trying to build a business partnership. There's various different reasons we use pitch decks. And so the formats of pitch decks can vary a little bit, but I'm going to take you through some general tips, which are good, and then a basic format for your pitch deck. But you basically develop different pitch decks or different versions of pitch decks depending upon who your target audience is. So the first thing, though, is pitch decks are basically slides. They're slides that reinforce what you're trying to say and what you're trying to communicate. So first and foremost, you want really clean, easy to read slides. I'm going to show you 3 different examples here in a minute. And you want your slides to have, good use of photos and graphs and graphics, infographics if possible. And your bullet points, you want really short bullet points, 3 to 7 words. Because your slides are about supporting what you're going to say. It's not long prose and long sentences about what your idea is. The pitch deck, what you should do is develop your pitch deck with the thought of, I'm going to have a chance to get in front of somebody live. I want to take them through this PowerPoint deck and show them what we're talking about. And all I want my slides to do is reinforce some of the key points. We want really short bullet points, good graphics, good photos. Once again, I'll show you some examples here in a second. Second thing is, because you have limited number of words, limited number of slides, limited amount of time, challenge yourself. How can you be precise, concise, and persuasive? And those 3 words sometimes actually kind of work against each other. Precise is being as exact as you can. At the same time, concise says, how do I use as few words as possible? And then finally, I need to be persuasive. That's why we call it a pitch deck. You're trying to convince somebody. So think of those 3 words as you build your slides. Are my slides precise, concise, and persuasive? Try to use data where possible. If you can bring data into your pitch deck, it gives you a lot more credibility. When you talk about the market size, when you talk about maybe some things you've done with your MVP, when you talk about how big some other companies are, whatever the case is, if you can bring data into your pitch deck, it gives you a lot more credibility. And if you don't have data in your pitch deck, you're going to get asked those questions anyway. And the key thing also is make sure you cite your sources kind of on the bottom of your PowerPoint slide. If you're using data, you'll see some examples of this once again. We want to use data where possible. Fourth piece is you want to build a story, and it's a story from kind of beginning to end. So, when you think through, how am I going to use my 10 or 12 or 15 slides? What's the story I want to tell? How am I going to tell that story from beginning to end that really kind of tells a cohesive, persuasive, pitch for what I'm trying to get done? And I'll show you once again through some examples here. Okay, here is some easy tests, or here's 3 easy steps to build and test each of your slides. First of all, every slide has got a purpose. So whatever that first slide is, or that second slide or 5th slide, you want to ask yourself, what do I want to tell the audience with this specific slide? Write down what your objective is. Not on the slide. That's kind of just, if you're building a slide, what's my objective to get done on this slide? Then develop your slide. Then practice presenting your slide. And then get feedback. Does this slide, create and tell the story that I wanted it to? Is it concise? Is it precise? Is it visually appealing? Does it really work hard for me? And do that for each of your slides. You're only going to have about 10 to 15 slides here. So what we want to do is really have good, concise, persuasive slides, and every slide should tell a story that builds into an overall story. Once again, I think you'll see this come to life when I show you some examples here overall. And then the final piece. Once again, I've talked about this in previous presentations. Your job is to sell lottery tickets, not dimes. So a few of you may be saying, what are you talking about, Professor Haller? What is lottery tickets versus dimes? Well, if you recall, I've shown you a couple times before, if I gave you the choice between getting a quarter or getting a ticket, a lottery ticket to the $90 million lottery tomorrow, which would you rather have? Well, even though the quarter is worth more, theoretically, people want lottery tickets. So the same thing is true with your presentation. I want you to sell emotion. I want you to sell big ideas. I want you to sell excitement. You're out there selling lottery tickets. Your goal is to convince investors that you have a big idea. And I want you to think about it that way, in a very emotional, persuasive overall format, that you're getting the people that you're presenting to excited about your product or service. Okay, so any questions, Michael, have popped up yet?
No, nothing new.
Okay, all right. So the best way for me to show you some pitch deck, or to teach you how to use pitch decks, is I want to show you a couple examples of pitch decks. And I'm going to show you the Uber pitch deck and the Airbnb pitch deck. We've used these as examples in the past, but these are actually some of the original pitch decks that each of these companies used. And then I'm going to give you kind of a format template for you to go through for our piece. So let me just stop my share for a second. And I've got to pull up another slide to show the Uber one. And 1 second. Okay. There we go. Okay, so this is the original Uber Power Deck. We're going to send this to you as a PDF. You'll see this Slidebeam. Slidebeam is a software that you can use to help make pitch decks. You can look at them if you want to. It's just kind of a piece of software, but they have a couple examples of, and they have some templates out there. And this is the Uber pitch deck. And I'm more concerned about just showing you how the Uber pitched their idea first than anything else. So let's go through this. So, so Uber Cab, actually that's what their original name was. It was called Uber Cab. So this is back, I think they started their company around 2007, 2008. Uber Cab, the next generation car service. So here's the name of my company. Here's a nice tagline. I've got a nice visual. It's a nice slide to kind of start out with and take people through. So let me introduce you to the Uber Cab next generation car service. So first slide, problem. Cabs in 2008. Most cabs are using aging and inefficient technology. They've got radio dispatch systems. There's no easy two-way communication. They're using old cars. They're dirty, Crown Victoria, that eat up gas and all this other stuff. And by the way, if you want to try to get a cab in a city, you have to hail them down, and there's no easy way to communicate between clients and drivers. You spend lots of time looking for cabs, lots of dead time and all that. All big problems in 2008 with cab service. I used to travel by cab in New York City when I went in to do business there all the time. It was one of the worst things ever in trying to flag down cabs and all that. It's been so much easier since Uber's come along. Another problem was the quality of service was actually lower. What was happening is if you had that cab service, you actually had to buy a medallion. So basically a taxi cab driver in New York City had to buy the right to drive a cab. And medallions went for about $200,000 a piece to drive a cab. So basically you had to invest $200,000 to buy a medallion. It would go to the city. And you could resell the medallions later on. Actually, I think they went up to $500,000, it shows here. And basically, because people were investing in these medallions for the right to drive, it was kind of reducing the overall quality of service. Another problem they talked about. So here's our solution. The Uber Cab concept. Fast and efficient demand on service. We're going to market to professionals in American cities. It's the convenience of a cab in New York City, plus the experience of a professional chauffeur. But we're going to focus on San Francisco and New York City. We're going to use the latest web and device technology, automatically dispatching people to reduce wait time, optimize speed to incentive drivers, and we're going to have these car services and literally groups of car services. So here's a basic explanation of what the concept is, kind of a first overall impression of what the idea is. Now they're going to drill into talking about how the concept works. So this is the how it works side. So I presented the problem. I've talked about the solution. Now let me drill down a little bit further. How does this work? Well, first of all, you have to be a member to be part of the service. So you join as a member. You don't hail from the streets. You're basically going to use your car or use your mobile phone to hail a cab, and then you're going to have a guaranteed pickup. Unlike a yellow cab where you have to kind of call into a dispatch service. So right off your phone, one-click service. And so you'll have this one-click hailing where you basically have your pickup in 5 minutes, members only. We're going to have this optimized fleet. We're going to basically have cars all around the city. So we'll get you to the fastest car, very fast response times. You're going to be in luxurious cars, because people are going to be driving nicer cars out there than the cars that the cabs are driving. You'll know exactly where your car is. You'll know who your driver is. Oh, and by the way, the drivers, you get to rate the drivers and rate your trip. And the drivers will rate you. So lots of key differentiators here in terms of what makes us different than taxi cab services. Some additional operating principles. We're gonna have luxury service options available. We want to have the best user experience. We're going to optimize response times. Oh, and by the way, you don't have to have cash. That was another big thing with taxi cabs, is you had to pretty much pay by cash. They didn't take credit cards back there. And so we'll have this network of networks of Uber drivers out there. And this just talks about more about how the product works with one click, and they're there in a second. Shows a little bit more about the product where you can kind of see your driver. Once again, they're drilling into this. By the way, this presentation is probably about a 20-minute presentation. So they had a lot longer to present. So your slides need to be a lot shorter than this. But this just shows how they drilled into more about how the product works. They talked about different ways that people would use this. When I couldn't find parking, this would be better than, worrying about finding parking in a busy area. I could take trips from restaurants and bars. I can go back and forth from the airport. If I had to kind of work while commuting, it's a great way for me to kind of work while commuting. I wouldn't have to necessarily be driving myself to work. And then just some additional user benefits here. Once again, we'll be studying all these slides. So their initial service area, they talked about here. This was their MVP. They were where they were gonna test away initially, and so they said we're gonna start doing this in San Francisco. So they just picked the downtown San Francisco area to prove this was gonna go work. They talked about the key things that they would need in terms of mobile phones from a technology standpoint. They'd have to have this payment system, and they had this patent pending design that they had submitted patents on. More about kind of demand forecasting. Here's the market size. We're going to talk about market size. How big is the market? They talked about it being a $4.2 billion market for taxi cabs. 22% of the revenues are the top four people combined. Very fractionated marketplace overall. And they talked about where the market was in terms of where people take their trips. Obviously, they take lots of airport trips and other trips for retail purposes and the like. They talked about their target cities. They were going to start in San Francisco, then go to New York City, then to some of the other major cities in the U.S. And their goal was to get to 50% of the entire U.S. market. Remember, this was in 2008 before they even thought about going international. So their best case scenario is we can become a market leader and get $1 billion in revenue. A more realistic scenario was our goal was to get 5% of the top 5 U.S. cities. That would be $20 to $30 million of profit per year. Worst case scenario is this will work in San Francisco, maybe not be that big an idea. But basically, they kind of created these different scenarios with possibilities. They talked about how big the industry was, long-term in other places. They talked about smartphones across the world, different kinds of smartphones, other optimizations, other things they could add to the service and the like. Once again, remember this is a 25 to 30-minute presentation. Had some additional go-to-market ideas of how they were going to go build the marketplace. Here they showed some traction to date. So they showed here's some of the stuff that we've done to date already while we're trying to get our money. And that was their last slide. So that's basically how they went through their pitch. What I want to kind of emphasize here, good definition of problem, good definition of solution, explaining how it's going to work. They had some good slides on that. And then they talked about, some of their success and how big the marketplace was going to be and things like that. Notice the slides are very visual, short bullet points, good visualization, bringing it to life. Now let me show you another slide presentation from Airbnb. You'll notice it's a little bit different. And then I'm going to zero in onto what we want you guys to do for your presentations. Okay, so 1 second here. Okay, here's the Airbnb deck. Airbnb was introduced a little bit, about the same time, actually, I guess. So Airbnb, book rooms with locals rather than hotels. Once again, very simple slide to start with. Here's the problem. Price is an important concern for consumers booking travel online. This also is 2008. We just were in a recession, so it was even more of a problem. Hotels left you disconnected from the city and its culture, and there was no easy way to book a room with a local or become a host. So our solution to Airbnb is we are going to build a web platform where users can rent out their extra space in their homes and become to host travelers, where basically travelers save money, hosts make money, and we also get an opportunity to share the culture with local people. And the other insight coming off of this, there was some sites out there called Couchsurfing, which was a site that you could actually use to find somebody's room or somebody's home who would give you a free couch to sleep on for the night. Well, that was out there, but nobody was really trying to monetize that. And so they also talked about how the fact that a lot of people were using Couchsurfing, but there was no easy way to monetize it for the hosts. And so this making money for hosting was also a big piece of the idea. So their market validation was, there was 670,000 people who were posting on Craigslist, who were looking for rooms and places to stay. Couchsurfing, which I just told you about, has 17,000 listings that you could find out there. And so there was already some demand out there for people looking for places to stay and the like. So therefore, they then looked at how the market size for trips booked. There was 2 billion trips booked worldwide annually. 560 million of them were actually people looking for on a budget, and also booking online. And so their goal was to get to about 84 million people in share of market, which was 15% share of that 560 million. That was their hope in Airbnb as they talked about the market size. So their product, well, what's our product look like? Well, this is where they started the show, some of their screen captures of how they were going to go build out their product. So you'll basically search by city. You'll go into a city, type in, or go in search bar, and you'll type in a city. We'll then bring up some selections of what's available within that city. You can then review the listings. Very simple format here. You'll see visually where they're located within an area. You'll get a snapshot of what the actual rent's going to, or the cost per night's going to be. Some pictures of what it's going to look like. You can then drill into it and actually look at an individual property and get all the details about it. Look at your availability dates, type in how many guests you have, find out additional information about the property itself, see some beautiful pictures. And now they talked about their business model. So this would have come off their business model canvas. So their goal was to earn a 10% commission on every transaction. So they figured there was an $84 million market out there. 10% commission on each of the average room nights would have, at 80%, would have led to a $25 average fee that they would have earned. And therefore, by selling 84 million room nights, they would have got to a $200 million business by 2011. So they clearly talked about how much revenue they thought they could generate in the first couple years. Then they talked about how they were going to go to market. Well, they were going to do events. They were going to go to all these different events that had travelers and talk about it. They were going to build partnerships with sites like Orbitz and Kayak and other alternative travel sites. And they were going to also post their rooms also on Craigslist. So those were the 3 ways they wanted to go to market initially. They talked about who's the competition out there. Well, when you look at the competitors, they're really, Airbnb was all about online transactions that were affordable, and there were other competitors in different spaces, but nobody was really doing affordable online transactions, especially the way they were going to go do it. And they talked about what's our competitive advantage? What makes us different? Well, first of all, we're the first to market with this transaction-based temporary housing site. Very simple to use. Price, location, and check-in, very simple. Great user profiles. You can book within 3 clicks. The hosts themselves can actually post one time and list their property, once on there, and then just literally book reservations into their home. We've got a beautiful, design. We love our Airbnb name. Everybody, a lot of people know a B&B is. So Airbnb is the whole idea of you can do it online. And then the incentive, the host is going to have make lots of money here and create a great experience for the traveler themselves. And so those are some of the things they highlighted. Go ahead, by the way, keep typing in chat. I know a bunch of you have questions coming up. They then had their slide here, and actually, I believe all three of these guys are still actually with the company. And so they had a picture of each of them and a little bit of background on them. They talked about some of the press they were getting. They had some testimonials from some of their first customers. They talked about their financial piece in terms of how much money they had raised in each of the steps along the way. And then that was it. So, this one's even much more simpler than the Uber one I just showed you. So very visual, much shorter pitch deck, but gets across the whole overall piece of what your idea is all about. So Michael, I think I saw a couple of things pop up here in chat. So you want to throw me those questions?
Yeah, so Bianca would like to know if you know what sites Airbnb and Uber use to create their presentations or get those icons throughout their slides.
Yeah, so my guess is they just grabbed those icons themselves. I don't think they used any third-party site for that. So you can, there's lots of sites. If you guys want to, type, if you can literally type in, show me an icon for this, and you can often find something through Google search and images and the like. So I encourage you, don't worry too much about making the perfect image for each of your slides. Just find something that you think works close enough and make that work. If you do want to go check out the Slide Beam, they've got some images there too that you might want to pop in. You could pop in there and all that. But I'm sure they had a designer create some of their icons and the like.
That's the only question I've seen so far.
That's it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So let me stop sharing again and go back to my original PowerPoint. So by the way, I'm going to send you once again all of these, both these decks so you can see them for yourself. And let me pull my other slide back here. Here. Share. Okay, back to original PowerPoint deck here. Okay, so I've shown you Uber, I've shown you Airbnb. Now let me give you the format for the pitch deck that you want to create. And once again, you have 5 minutes. So it's probably going to be about 10 slides, maybe 12, maybe 13. If you have 5 slides, it's probably not enough. And if you have 20 slides, you'll never get through it in 5 minutes. So think about 10 to 12 slides as kind of being your target overall. And let me show you kind of how I would suggest you start thinking about the format. So once again, like Airbnb, you want to kind of have a nice cover slide, have your company name on it or your service name on it, whatever your working name, put your team number on there. And then if you have a logo, you can add that, or your first cut of the logo. If you have a tagline, you can put that on there. Both of those are optional. As you can see, it kind of helps sometimes if you have something that brings it to life. This is your opportunity to introduce yourself to the judges quickly right away and kind of frame up everything. So company name and then logo and tagline optional. That's your first slide. Okay, your second slide is I want you to start by introducing your team. So just quickly go through this. So basically pull up pictures of your team, first name, last name, put what school you're from and what your ages are. That'll just give the judges some perspective on who the team members are and the like. You don't have to say anything else about the team members. Please do not put any email addresses or phone numbers on the slides. So just first name, last name, and school and age. Okay, so now to do a little bit of interaction. Okay, let's see how many people can rattle off who these 5 people are. So go ahead to chat. Let's see who can get to all 5 people. At least try to get to 4 of the 5. I'll monitor chat here. So type in the chat who these 5 people are. Yeah, Lin-Manuel is one of them. That's the last one. Good. Who else is up there? Bezos, Musk, Winfrey, Manuel. Good. Okay. So somebody got 4 of the 5. Who's number 2? Anybody know who number 2 is? She was actually a guest speaker last year at Signal, but I don't think she was at this year. I don't think I had a chance to see her. So the second one, that's Amy Chang. Amy is on the board of directors of P&G. She's founded several companies and now is part of Cisco overall. So anyway, that's our little interactive piece. And by the way, Musk is not going to space, and I guess Bezos goes this week. I think is his blast off day. I think it's tomorrow. I think actually. So anyway, this is a side note. Okay, next slide. Okay, your second slide, or after your team slide, I want you to introduce your problem. So on this slide, define what your problem is, how you want to bring it to life. Look at your week 1 work. You want to clearly state what the problem is and identify who has the problem. On this slide, don't talk about how you're going to solve the problem. Clearly talk about what the problem is and what you're trying to solve. You're trying to set up the rest of your presentation by really bringing your problem to life. So anything you can do to kind of bring it to life on this slide, that's what you want to start with, okay? So recall both the Airbnb and the Uber both talked about the problem they wanted to solve. Real good definition of what your problem you want to solve is. Next slide. The solution. Oh, and by the way, if you haven't seen these bullet points on here, is what we call Greek. I don't know if you guys have seen that. It just kind of fills in the rest of the slide. So those words mean nothing other than just simply bullet points in there. But your solution, real simple, 1 slide, very high level slide on what your solution is. I don't want you to dive into it too deep. It's really just what is your solution to the problem. So now that you've set up the problem with the previous slide, how can you clearly talk about, here's what our overall solution is. You're going to drill into your solution a little bit deeper right after this, but I want you to talk about in 1 slide what your solution is succinctly, short and sweet. Make sure it clearly addresses the previous slide. So if I read the solution slide, it should answer the previous slide of the problem. So I should be able to read the problem slide and the solution slide and say, oh, that's really interesting. Tell me more. That's what you really want to get done at this part of the presentation. Okay, after we talk about the solution, and these slides can be in a slightly different order, and we might move them around for each of your presentations, but we definitely want to have a slide talking about the market size. So how big is the market, do you think, for whatever product or service you're developing? How could you define the market size in terms of how many people are out there that have the problem? How much money is spent on that problem? How many what's the total market size? Any data you can find overall. So in chat, once again, and I've looked at all your products or services a little bit. What are some ways you might describe, think about your individual product or service. So how big is your market? Have you thought about that? How many people, or what's the size of your marketplace? So go ahead and type in the chat right now. I'll take a quick look at how people are thinking about it. How big is, oops, sorry about that. How big is your problem? Let's see. Just type in the chat. How big is your problem? How big is your market? Anybody think about what it is? How would you describe how big your market is? Company budgets, size of target audience. Okay. Population size, perhaps. Okay, good. Especially of your target market. Okay, so think about that. How can you talk about how big your target market is? Okay, next slide. Now I want you to go into talking a little bit about your product or service and bring it to life. Okay, and this is where you're gonna start to show your product or your service, tell a little bit more about it. This is, recall Airbnb and Uber both tried to show some slides, 2 or 3 slides that talked about how their product works and bring it to life. So this is where you can start to create, graphics and visuals that bring to life your product. Anything you can do data-wise to talk a little bit about it, explain how the basic piece works. Recall you only have 5 minutes, so you want to do enough to talk about how the product works, but not too much that you're going to go over your 5 minutes. So what can you talk about to talk about how your product works through visualization, and really get into some details. Maybe take some time to explain, various different features of your product. Once again, go back and look at the Airbnb and Uber slides. I think you'll see some good examples where they talked about how their product works, or their service works. So how can you bring that to life with a couple slides there? Okay, I just saw something come up in chat. Let me take a quick look at that. Would the product or service slide be a good place for a product demo? Okay, so product demo, going to be really hard. So you only have 5 minutes. So if your product demo is 30 seconds or less, and you're willing to give 30 seconds of your time away for your product demo, then go for it. If your product demo is a minute and a half, and you want to give that much time away, I think it's too much time to give away for a 5-minute presentation. So if you have a short, 3 or 30-second way to demo it in a video that you have, then I think that's probably fine. You can always then answer more questions during the Q&A section. So make sure you use your time wisely, but good question. In a longer presentation, you might have more time to actually show a little video demo of your piece. But this is really, screen captures, talk through things, and then in the Q&A, let the judges ask a little bit more. Okay, next question or next section. What makes your product different? How does it differ versus other solutions out there or other people that have tried it? What's the key differentiators? Remember, both on Uber and on Airbnb, they talked about what made their product so special and so different. What was unique about it? What can you talk about that really makes it seem different overall? And then right after that slide, or maybe even right before that slide, you want to talk about your competition. Who is the competition? What are some other things that people are using? How are you going to be different versus the competition? So now we've talked about how the product works. Now we want to talk about what makes it different and who the competition is. We want to have a little bit of feel for what else has been tried out there overall. Okay. In your business model canvas, the most important reason I had you look at your business model canvas is for the next couple of slides. Hopefully you've thought through how are you going to go market and sell your product or service. Look at your business model canvas. If you've done a good business model canvas, my guess is you have some of the answers right there. How are you going to go market and sell your product or service? How are you going to go make it a success? If you don't answer this question, I guarantee the judges will ask you this question. So you're much better off talking a little bit about how you plan to go to market and sell the product. And then, so once again, a question to everybody. Thinking about your product or service that you guys have been working on in chat, go ahead and type in the chat right now how you were going to go market and sell your product or service. Let me just see what some of the answers are that you come up with here. Type that in the chat. How are you personally going to go, or how's your team going to go market and sell your product or service? Anybody? Any ideas? Word of mouth, okay. Word of mouth is great, although that's also challenging because, everybody loves to talk about word of mouth, but it takes time, something to get that going. Channels from your business model canvas, good, good. Local advertising with QR codes, okay, good. So this is social media. That's another easy one people talk about sometimes. Social media accounts because they're free and all that. Think real hard about this because this is a key question sometimes that differentiates sometimes the winning teams from the second place teams is teams that have thought through how are they going to go market and sell their product. So really challenge yourself. Look at your business model canvas. Talk about your channels. Think about who you have to reach and how are you going to go market and sell the product. And then the second question off your business model canvas is how are you going to make money? What are the revenue and cost streams for you to go do your product or service? Have you thought through what are all the various costs we're going to have to put into this product? Where are the different ways we're going to make money? And then have you pulled together some initial projections for your business or service and how much money you think you can really make? Once again, this is another key question that the judges will ask you about. So I really want you to look at your business model canvas and be able to talk about revenue and cost streams and talk about how much money you think you can make overall. There's lots of different ways to present this data. These last two slides, by the way, I usually spend a lot of time with the teams making sure that they're as good as they can be. So put together your best thinking on this. Have that together for this Saturday. We'll work on this next week and how we kind of make it even stronger overall. By the way, I am totally agnostic in terms of who wins the pitch competition. My goal is to make each of your teams the best possible versions of yourself. And so I will work really hard with each of you to make your slides work as strong as you can. But you want to really think about what's my business model? How am I going to generate revenue and what are going to be my cost streams? So have you thought about how you're going to make money? Anybody want to go ahead and type in the chat? What are the various ways you're going to make money? How are you guys going to generate revenue? How are you going to go talk about that? How do you plan to make money? Have you thought about what you're going to charge? Have you thought about the various different revenue streams? By the way, Lance, I just saw your question on B2B marketing. There's lots of different ways to go do B2B marketing. In the social media space, there's LinkedIn, there's lots of other ways. Usually sales organizations work on B2B. There's B2B marketing. If you get stuck on that, we can talk about that next week when I work with your team. Percentage of sales, to the sale of tangible products good. Think about all the revenue streams. Is there a setup cost to use your product and then there's a reoccurring revenue? Is your goal to get trial initially and maybe not make much money on the trial, but you'll get reoccurring revenue because once somebody tries it, they'll want to buy it once every month or once every 6 months? You want to think through all those different aspects of how are you going to go make money? Okay, good. All right. And then you can kind of put together a little bit of a revenue forecast. So sometimes you'll put together the next 3 or 4 years, and you might suggest, and you'll think about, how many users might I have? There's lots of different ways to do slides like this. What might be my total revenue? Then I'm going to take my costs away, and how much money am I going to make or lose? Go look at the Airbnb and Uber ones. They had a couple good examples of how much they thought they could make and what they, how they presented this data. And by the way, it's okay not to make money the first couple of years. If it's going to cost you more because you've got to spend more money on advertising or salespeople or things like that, that's okay. What investors want to see is, have you thought through how you can make money long term? And they recognize sometimes you have to invest money to make money. And I just keep these forecasts relatively simple. You can do something like this for the first 3 or 4 years, or you can just maybe do a year 1 and year 5 number. I don't want to make these too complicated. I just simply use this as an example one. I think the Airbnb had a couple good examples I would suggest you kind of go, and the Uber ones go look at. All right. I do not know the names of all the judges. Maybe Michael will know that at the end. I saw your question there. I'll leave that one up to Michael if he's got that answer at the end here to answer. Okay, then next. Okay, then your second to last slide is, what are your next steps? And so here's something to keep in mind here is these judges realize most of you have just done this for 6 weeks. You didn't even really have a product idea until 3 weeks ago. So most of them recognize that you're in the early stages here. And for those that you have been working on an idea for a while, you're still probably in the early stages. So a great slide here is, what are your next steps? What are you trying to go do with this idea? Your next step might be, we want to go build out our MVP further to get more feedback on this idea. Or we're looking for somebody to help mentor us. Or we want to join an accelerator and get into a class to help move our idea forward. Or, we want to see if anybody else wants to partner with us. Think about what are your next steps. This is a great time to kind of identify what you want to do, because often the judges might be able to help, give you some counsel, make some connections, There's lots of interesting things we can do for you in Cincinnati that really help you think through what is the next steps for their idea, and really think about how you can kind of set that up as an opportunity, so that whether you win this competition or not, you might have some clear next steps if you want to try to advance this idea and where do you go next with. And then finally, your last slide. Once again, finish with your company name and your team number, so everybody remembers that. You can have your logo and tagline on there. Once again, don't put any emails or addresses or phone numbers on your last slide. And it's really just kind of, here's our team here, and we'd love to talk to you more. So, so that's the general gist of the pitch deck that I want you to kind of pull together. So notice it's probably 10 to 12 slides. You've got the Uber example, you've got the Airbnb example. And so I've shown you this slide before. Clean, easy to read slides, precise, concise, persuasive. Use data where possible. Build a story. Look at each of your slides and say, is this slide communicating what I wanted to communicate? Practice your slides. Then make sure we're selling lottery tickets, emotional presentations, big ideas, things of that nature overall. Okay. We'll talk about the judges, by the way, next week in terms of more information next week. Thank you, Zan, on that. And okay, so last poll question. How excited are you to build your pitch deck? Now that I've gone through and talked about what it is, go ahead and page down to question number 3. Slide all the way down. Here's the choices. You're ramped up and ready to go. What did I get myself into? You're a little bit nervous, but I'm glad I'm here. Take no prisoners. All other teams are playing for second. Or I'm ready to change the world. Which one best describes where you feel you are right now with your pitch deck? Ooh, somebody's ready to change the world. That's great. Ramped up and ready to go. All right. Well, that's great here. So, hey, great session today. I know some of you are going to be watching this recorded. Let me go through one more time the homework for this week. This is really, really important that you work on this and really, make sure you're on pace and on target. This week, you're going to work on your pitch deck. Seek out your mentor for help. That's why you have mentors. They're more than willing to help you. They're going to give you great feedback, great coaching. If you have a specific question this week, go ahead and email me. I will get back to you within 24 hours at the latest, often within 4 or 5 hours, and try to give you an answer while you have a question this week. And we want you to get your first draft of your pitch deck ready by next Saturday into Michael so that we can look at them on Sunday, and come Monday for the next session, we will have some additional comments for you overall. And then I will be meeting with each of your teams individually to go through your pitch decks. So the competition is a week from this Friday. It'll come here quicker than you can imagine. And so it's really important you kind of stay on pace, get your first draft of your pitch deck done by Saturday, and then I'll give you lots of time to kind of help you through next week overall. Once again, I want to thank our sponsors, P&G, Kroger, First Financial, Taft, and KMK.